Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. Today is February 18th. This show was originally planned to air earlier in the week, but inclement weather, snowstorms, and ice storms here in Louisville, Kentucky made it impossible for me to get into the studio on Monday. I probably could have got here, but they said that we were going to get so much more snow than we actually did. That's the job for you. If you want to be able to be wrong 99% of the time and not lose your job, become a meteorologist, because they've got more sophisticated equipment today and they're wrong more frequently than ever before. So this show today, I'm going to be joined by my good friend and brilliant individual, Joel Greene, in just a moment. And we're going to talk about becoming unconfused about dairy. And this is really a hot topic. There are so many dietary templates that demonize dairy. There's so many doctors who tell their patients, don't eat dairy. Are they right? Is there something intrinsically inherently bad about dairy? Does the context and the individual play a role in whether or not dairy works for you or not? You know, there are some of the longest lived populations on the planet today are lacto-vegetarians, that other than greens, they eat nothing but dairy. And they're the longest lived individuals on the planet. So is dairy really bad? And you know, Joel Greene loves to talk how silly baby talk is. Tell me what's good. Tell me what's bad. So we're going to get to the bottom of dairy today and find out, is it a superfood or is it a super unhealthy food? And that discussion will clear things up for you. Before we do that, of course, I have to thank my title sponsor, and that is Legendary Foods. I can't stop eating their red velvet tasty pastry. The new cake-style tasty pastry is unbelievable. I promise you, it is amazing. If you go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10, you'll save 10% off. 20 grams of high leucine, high-quality protein, 5 grams of net carbs, less than a gram of sugar. These are delicious. Now, if you're too cheap to spring for them, listen to today's show. Listen for the secret word. When you hear the secret word, email it to onair@superhumanradio.net. The secret word airs during the commercials. And if your email is selected, you will be sent a box of tasty pastries. And keep in mind, your odds are very good because we are actually giving away more than one box a day now, just because the response has been so overwhelming. So take a chance. You could be the owner of a free box of tasty pastries. Again, listen during the commercial breaks. When you hear the secret word, email it to onair@superhumanradio.net and you are entered to win. And now, without further delay, let me get my guest up in front here, and that is Joel Greene. There he is, and get his mic turned on. How you doing, brother?
Hey, brother, I'm super good. I ate my entire box of the new red velvet when they came. I ate them all.
You know what's funny? Elisa said to me, "Please save me one," because I ate 2 the first night. Like I just ate, they were so good, and I've been eating them 2 at a time. And she was like, "Please save me one." So I actually put 2 and hid them for her. And I got to order more.
I ate 4 all at once. It's
Yeah.
like I have no self-control when it comes to that stuff. And
nothing wrong with those. They're just so good. People don't understand. This is a great replacement for a protein bar. Like if you are tired of protein bars, use the tasty pastry as your new protein bar. Finish every meal with one. It's a good dessert. There you go.
Oh, I got a really funny video I'm going to send to you and Ron and Mark Bell after this, where we actually so I went through all of them, and I was kind of jonesing for one last night. So we made a we made a tart run to a vitamin shop, and I filmed the whole thing. That's pretty funny. I'll send it
Oh
to you.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
So you've been doing a series. Okay, first of all, you are the originator of the term baby talk in the context of people who want to discuss nutrition. Is this good? Is this bad? That's what people always want to know. And because science is not that easy, that you term baby talk because it's really the wrong way to look at things. And you recently did a series about dairy because dairy is demonized. Wouldn't you agree that?
Very much so. Yeah. Yeah. It's like it's bad. Dairy's bad.
Dairy's bad. That's the baby talk.
Yeah.
Dairy's bad,
Yeah.
or dairy's
Yeah.
good, and it's
Yeah.
it's neither of those, right? So start at the beginning. What was the original points that you made when you started doing the series, becoming unconfused about dairy?
Yeah. I mean, kind of high level. So I started this series I'm doing on Instagram. I'm probably gonna bring it in other places, called Unconfused, and I just really wanted to take some of these kind of basic topics where nobody knows what to think, and then just really go kind of a little bit deeper and break them down, and look at them really objectively from all angles. So I just did that with dairy, and I've been researching dairy just kind of as a thing for about 15 years. So I have a huge stack of research on it. And what I think a lot of people would be very surprised to understand is that dairy is incredibly functional. Like when you look at it in the research, it's almost a rabbit hole of endlessly fascinating functional aspects and characteristics to it. So we've been coached into thinking dairy's bad by kind of the baby talk du jour. But when you actually begin to dive into the research, it's quite surprising. You see that it has a number of functional uses, and that it is very good for body composition. And there's very good research that shows that it's very good for conditions. So it's very good for hypertension, inflammation, and it's a very nuanced discussion. And it really makes you take everything you think you know and park it and kind of relearn as you dive into it. So in this, I just did a series on dairy, and the net of it is kind of like when you look at dairy as a functional food, beginning with body composition, it's probably the most functional food in the universe of foods. You could make a very good case that it is, and that alone will fire up half of the ecosystem and polarize them into like, you're crazy, it's bad, and we know it's bad, and here's why. And then you get all these.
I love the argument that we shouldn't be drinking any kind of milk once we are no longer infants.
Yeah.
And let's be clear about something. Bovine milk and human milk are very, 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 very similar, except maybe the amount of certain proteins or certain actives seem to be higher in bovine than in human milk. But people love to say, "Oh, once you've stopped, once you're not an infant anymore, you shouldn't be drinking milk." Why do they even come to that conclusion if milk is the only thing in nature made specifically to be food for humans? And we know that from an ancestral and evolutionary perspective, that mothers nursed for up to 3 or 4 years before children were completely weaned. Nursing is just a pain in the neck because of the industrialization of America. It's like, oh God, really? Let's get that baby on solid food as quickly as possible. But from an evolutionary perspective, children were drinking mother's milk 3, 4, 5 years old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when you don't have to go too far into bodybuilding circles to find bodybuilders who like are seeking out dairy farms to find like colostrum, bovine milk, because it makes them put muscle on like crazy, So that the contention that we shouldn't be drinking it past a certain age, it's one of those kind of tropes that doesn't really I like to scrutinize things. I like to just ask the question. We're at an age that is where free thought is kind of on the ropes. It's a very bad time for free thoughts. We're in this age where hegemony of thought is kind of reigning, and you're not supposed to really think things through. But the idea that dairy is bad is this thing, and that we've all accepted, but you shouldn't drink it past a certain age because it seems to make sense. But when you begin to break it down, it doesn't really seem to hold up to scrutiny. And it's just kind of a trope. It's kind of something that we've accepted, but it's kind of, in a sense, pseudoscience. Like why? Well, why shouldn't we drink it? Is there a reason? You know, and it gets into a lot of concepts that are pretty fascinating. So the first is, you know, you have to begin with the idea that there isn't one genome. There are three genomes that run the human body. There is the human, the mitochondrial, and the bacterial genome. So those three genomes together are what run the human body, not the one human genome. And that's a very important point, because if we skew only towards the human genome, then we go down this line of thinking that, well, you know, lactase persistence and blah, 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 all this stuff. But when you begin to look at how things actually work, which is, well, now three genomes run the human body, and the interaction of those three genomes creates over 4 million SNPs, genetic possibilities, that we're just still documenting and inventorying, then it brings you into a different way of looking at the problem, which is that, well, many of the genes that we need to digest dairy are not in the human genome, they're in the bacterial genome.
Mm-hmm.
And we can acquire those genes. And so we get into like a gestalt. We get into like well, dairy's bad, you know, that's in the foreground. But when you begin to think about three genomes, it becomes, well, the genes needed to digest the dairy are in the bacterial genome. And when they're missing, so when those genes are missing, oh, dairy's bad. But when you have the genes you need from the bacterial genome, there's no issues with dairy. And so the entire way of looking at dairy, which is, well, dairy's bad because you can't digest it, because you don't have the genes, blah, 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 all this stuff. Well, it's a line of thinking that's not even based on how things actually work. How things actually work is you have three genomes that run your body. And when you begin to look at that, it becomes very often, not always, but very often a case of missing bacteria. And not that dairy is bad, but just that you're lacking the bacteria that originally came with the dairy. Like when you first got breast milk, there was bacteria in the breast milk. And that's what allowed you to digest the breast milk. And so without the bacteria, you're going to have issues. And so very often it's a case of missing bacteria and not the fact that the dairy itself is bad.
So let's stay with this for a second. So I did a show probably several years ago where a group of scientists wanted to see if there was any real validity to people who were told they were lactose intolerant, because when they consumed milk and dairy, they had GI distress. And the research showed that almost 100% of the people who were either told by physicians or deduced on their own that they were lactose intolerant were in fact not lactose intolerant and had lactase persistence, which means that they could digest lactose, which sent the scientists on a new path, which I never had them back on, to try to determine what specifically about dairy was causing these people GI distress. I submitted some logic. I said, well, maybe it's what the cows are eating, because we know that what the mother eats makes its way into the breast milk. And that's not only, that's not accidental. It's actually preparing the baby for the environment that it's going to be coming into, with certain nutritional factors that are available in that environment. It's kind of like preceding the microbiome to say, hey, when you're a big boy or girl and you're chewing your food, you're probably going to eat the same stuff your mother did. So let's go ahead and give you some of those nutrient factors now. And so I said, maybe it's the cows that are eating corn and soy, and maybe those things are making their way into the milk. And those are the things that were actually causing distress for these people. And he agreed that would be a great next step study for them. I never heard back from him. So with that being the case, assuming that, in fact, people are not lactose intolerant, and your point about the microbiome probably plays a large role in that level of tolerance or intolerance, what is it about milk that makes it such a popular allergen today, that so many people say, oh, you know, if I drink milk, I develop stuffy nose and mucus and all this other stuff? Have you been able to get to the bottom of any of that at all in your research?
I would offer that most of it is missing bacteria in nature. It's been shown since the 90s that you can pretty much eliminate lactose intolerance by feeding small amounts of lactose and titrating lactose upwards. And now there's a small but growing body of research that has shown over and over and over the symptoms of lactose intolerance are basically, more or less quote unquote cured simply by spinning up strains of bifidobacteria and lactobacillus in the gut. So what you see is that it's very easy to conflate the problem. Like you have dairy and then you have sort of these allergy issues and you think, well, that's because dairy's bad. But what's been shown is that very specific species of bifidobacteria will prevent the conversion of histidine into histamine. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And a number of other things present when those bacteria are present. And it just makes sense if you think about it. Like if you think about it, our first dose of milk came from mom. And in that dose of milk was all the bacteria needed. Our starter dough, our starter culture of bacteria in our gut came from that. And in that were the enzymes needed to break milk down and digest milk. But they were not human enzymes, they were bacterial enzymes. And the research seems to show this, and it's quite replicatable, that when species of bacteria that are not present in the gut are increased, the issues with milk go away. And I personally know it's true. I used to break out horribly if I had milk. I mean, I would get like really bad cystic acne if I had milk. Right. Today, as a post-workout thing, I drink grass-fed, unpasteurized milk, which gets you high, by the way.
Bingo. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's loaded with morphine analogs. It gets you really high. But I drink it. I have no issues whatsoever. None whatsoever. I can have ice cream. I can have all the stuff I never used to be able to have. And it's just because I finally figured out, like, oh, wow, if I can just retune the culture in my gut, then I can digest the milk. And so that's a personal proof. Like when you can prove something personally yourself, no one's ever going to convince me that's not true because I've experienced it. And it's something anybody can prove to themselves. You can do it. You can go and titrate up bifidobacteria strains in the gut, lactobacillus strains in the gut. And Mark Bell did it. It happened with Mark. We gave him HMO and his lactose intolerance went away. So it's that's the first grouping of issues with milk, which is under the umbrella of the lactose related issues.
So Robert Thompson asks the question, and this was going to be my next segue, if there is really any difference between pasteurized and homogenized and raw milk. And the first thing I'm going to tell you, Robert, is go to the website realmilk.com. This website is maintained by the Weston A. Price Foundation, and they have so much great research that's done by real scientists who have nothing to gain because they don't sell milk. That shows that there is a big difference. So one of the things that happens all the time is people who say they're lactose intolerant, when they start drinking raw and pasteurized milk, they find out that they're not lactose intolerant because the required enzymes are already there. There's even protein transporters in raw milk that help the protein do its job better. There's oligosaccharides in raw milk specifically for the microbes that are in the raw milk to keep them alive while you're consuming them. So raw milk is magic. So talk about this. Is a lot of the problems we have today with dairy as a result of the commercialization of dairy processing?
Yes, there is very good research that suggests that's exactly the case. There was a study done called the EPIC study, which was out of France, and there's other research as well that corroborates this, that shows that a lot of the allergen issues with dairy began with pasteurization in the 50s, and that when you begin to look at fermented products, fermented milk. Well, what do you mean by fermented? Well, it just means there's bacteria in there. Okay, so when you look at the research on fermented milk products, milk with bacteria, you don't see those issues at all. It's only when we begin to, again, coming back to the 3 genomes, the genes we need to break milk down in most cases are not in the human genome. They're in the bacterial genome. And so when you eliminate the bacteria needed to digest, to make the enzymes to digest milk, you're gonna have issues. There was a really very nice girl that Shalina, I forget her last name, but she's a track racer. She races like death bikes on tracks.
Right.
Super cool chick. She messaged me after my first Unconfused video and said that some of the newer practices, she's a rancher by trade, and some of the newer practices with milk is beginning to put some of the fermentation products back in pasteurized milk so people don't have the issues with it. So a lot of the perceived issues with milk really get to what I call grades of food. And it's this idea that if you want to criticize milk as a category, you have to back up a little bit and understand that pick any category, doesn't matter what, and you're going to have grades of food going from really crappy to like outstanding. That's true of any category. It's true of tomatoes. Like pick a tomato, okay? You could get the gas ripened tomatoes,
Yeah, right.
that are, engineered, and they ripen them on the way. They load them in the truck and ripen them on the way to the market.
Right.
Or if you've ever had an heirloom tomato, from a garden,
right,
where the flavor explodes in your mouth and your brain is overwhelmed by it, there are clear differences in any food you want to categorize, and it's true of dairy. So the Piedmontese steak is very different from some of these run-of-the-mill kind of grades of steak you can get at the market. They're very, very, very different. So when we look at dairy products, we have to keep in mind that what are we talking about? Are we talking about the lowest grade? Are we talking about kind of a median or a higher grade? Much of our perception about dairy comes from experience with the poorest grades of dairy, like pasteurized, corn-fed, higher in omega-6. In fact, something really interesting, when you look at the research in dairy and cancer, it seems to conflict a little bit. There seems to be some research that suggests dairy can promote cancer, but then there's a massive body of research that suggests dairy prevents cancer. And it's a little confusing. When you begin to parse out the research and you look at what's going on here, something that seems to come up quite a bit is the amount and type of dairy fat. So when you have dairy that is higher in fat, but it's kind of the omega-6 centric fat, well then that may be oncogenic. But when you look at milk that's higher in fat, where it's kind of the omega-3 centric fat, well, then it's actually cancer protective. And so all that just boils down to another subset of the omega-3, omega-6 argument. It has nothing to do even with dairy itself. It's just really the types of fat. So this argument is not as simple as the baby talk wants it to be. It can be very nuanced. But the takeaway, the really important takeaway, I think, is that for the stuff we care about, which is body composition, longevity, health, circulation, there are properties in dairy that will blow your mind once you understand what they are. It is extremely functional, and you don't have to look any farther than just look at whey protein by itself and look at all the documented benefits of whey protein. On blood sugar metabolism, on body composition, all these different things, and it's a dairy product, and that's true of multiple compounds in dairy. There are numerous compounds in dairy that are novel and unique and highly functional.
So if you want to learn more, I'm talking to the audience about why dairy is so heavily processed today. There's a book out there by Dr. Ron Schmidt, and he has passed away. He was on my show in 2006 or 7. And it's called The Untold Story of Milk. He explains that at the turn of the century, distillers were trying to find a use for the mash that was used in the process of making alcohol. And since the distilleries were closer to the city than the farmers, they decided to start milking cows and feeding them the mash. And when they did this, the cows who were taken off of grass and were fed corn and grain mash developed mastitis. And the pus got into the milk and it killed 1,100 people. It was called the swill milk epidemic. And the New York state was hit the worst. And children were killed because that's who mommy was giving the milk to. And so instead of the government going, distillers should not be in the business of making milk, because the distillers had big money, don't forget, they could buy politicians. It's always that way. They said, hey, heard about this thing called pasteurization in France. Give us a chance to see if this fixes the problem. And it did, because pasteurization killed the pathogens, but it also killed everything else that was originally good about milk. Remember, we didn't get that saying in the Bible, the land of milk and honey, because milk was killing people thousands of years ago. It was because milk and honey were considered wonderful blessings, that if you were living in the land of milk and honey, you had abundance and you had health. So it wasn't until the swill milk epidemic and the distillers getting into the business that we even needed to pasteurize milk. For thousands and thousands of years, we had been milking cows and other animals and benefiting from their milk. So if you really want to understand why we drink the crap we drink today and call it milk, the book is very cheap. It's on Amazon, and it's called The Untold Story of Milk. It's fascinating and it will make you rethink why we drink pasteurized milk today. Milk has never been bad for us until. The other thing I want to mention is I did a show probably about 5 or 6 years ago when we learned that through molecular sieving, that milk producing companies were now actually able to remove isolated amino acids from milk that they wanted to use for something else. So the milk you're getting today may not even have the amino acid profile that you think it does. Think about that for a second. Can they even call it milk? They sued Muscle Milk for calling Muscle Milk milk, and it's not milk. They're going after companies now for calling almond milk milk because it's not really milk. Well, the milk we drink today isn't even milk anymore.
You know, Carl, I'm right on the fence of starting a podcast. I haven't because I don't want to do one unless it's stuff I really want to talk about, you know. But like if I do, I want to have you on like on a regular basis because like I have so many things I want to say based on what you just said. And I feel like we could talk for 3 hours on this. Like there's just so many topics you and I can riff on. Like I just, wow, this is so fascinating. Like I didn't know that about the amino profiling in milk.
Oh yeah,
you just related. I mean,
you know,
like, that's
Robert loves. I'm going to find. See, so Robert loves Fairlife milk. He always talks about Fairlife milk because it's lactose free. They're stealing a lot of stuff from milk today that we don't even know about. Milk isn't delivering what it used to deliver. And that's why if you go to the website realmilk.com, you can find a farmer in your area that you can do what's known as it's actually called a cow share program where you buy shares of a cow and then you're entitled to buy milk from that cow. And it's raw and unpasteurized. At the beginning of the show, I said that some of the, excuse me, the longest lived individuals on the planet are lacto-vegetarians like the Hunza. They're not drinking pasteurized milk. They're milking their own cows. You think that the Maasai are buying milk at the grocery store and then mixing blood with it? No, they're milking their own cows. It's not pasteurized milk.
When I was growing up, my dad was a rancher at heart, and he had a place out in Riverside County, and he had horses and cows and all this stuff, and goats and all that, and we would have cow's milk every morning, and if you've ever had cow's milk, it's so rich that when you have regular milk next to it, even whole fat regular milk, it tastes like water. Like the difference is profound. Like some of the most switched on people in the world are ranchers and bodybuilders. Like they just know stuff. And do you remember Yemeni Mesa from Quest?
Of course, yes, of course, yeah. He was at Quest, yeah.
So I was talking to Yemeni one time about Yemeni was the original Metrex poster guy. He was the first guy in the Metrex ads. And Yemeni was, high level bodybuilder. He was, and he looks fantastic even today. I mean, he looks, Yemeni is ripped. And we were talking one day and he said, I knew a dairy farmer out in Bakersfield, and I used to make a trip out to Bakersfield once a week to get his fresh off the cow colostrum. And he goes, man, that stuff I put so much muscle on drinking that stuff.
I know.
And it gets to like, I keep using this word functional because most people are not aware of the functional properties that are in dairy. One of them I talked about recently is its effect on angiotensin converting enzyme. And when I was at Quest, one of the projects I was working on was to create foods that essentially mimicked fasting. And one of the ways that you mimic fasting while eating is to suppress angiotensin converting enzyme. Because if you can suppress angiotensin converting enzyme, it affects a whole swath of things that effectively mimic fasting. And milk is loaded in very special types of glycoproteins that some of them suppress angiotensin converting enzyme, which is effectively a natural ACE inhibitor. And it's a property that you find, for the most part, really mostly in dairy products, angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitory peptides. And it is this mechanistic link in dairy products. You can trace that all the way to dairy's role in reversing hypertension. So most people think dairy gives them hypertension. It's actually the reverse. It actually reverses hypertension. And it is directly due to its angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitory properties.
And in fact, I did a show with an Italian scientist. They did a study on Padano Parmesan cheese. And they showed that 3 ounces a day of Padano Parmesan cheese lowered blood pressure through those ACE inhibition effects. And I asked him during the show, is it just this cheese? And he said, probably not, because that peptide is found in just about every dairy product. And so while they focused on their cheese that came from their city, he said, no, dairy does that. Dairy will lower your blood pressure. It's fascinating. We have to take a break. We have lots of comments and questions. We'll get to all of them. Joel, plug your website, please. The Veep website.
Veepnutrition.com. Veepnutrition.com. I just released the brand new world's first immune-centric fat loss course. It's the only thing ever released where we're mechanistically dealing with the outcome when fat cells shrink and offsetting all of the mechanisms that kick in post-fat loss to prevent weight regain. So it's doing fantastic, and people are loving it, and check it out.
So it's Veep, VEEP nutrition.com that you need to go to. We're going to take one quick commercial break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more.
Yeah.
All right, more of Joel Greene. Wrong mic.
Yeah.
Are you ready to change the way you age? Of course you are. That's why you're here. Juvicel is a new first-of-its-kind dietary supplement that includes 10 key research-backed ingredients shown in studies to support lifespan. Things like resveratrol, fisetin, quercetin, pterostilbene, sulforaphane, turmeric, all in a single dose. You may have some of these ingredients already, but Juvicel is the first to combine them all into a single product to support your lifespan. It's vegan, non-GMO, and sustainable. Live better longer with Juvicel. Go to shrnetwork.biz/live better. Use code SHR and save 20% off today. Folks, I'm pleased to announce that Pure Nootropics is now carrying the antioxidant alpha-lipoic acid in its bioidentical natural form as R-Ala. R-Ala provides protection in many areas and has even been shown to promote weight loss. Check out the interview I did on episode 2608 back in October to learn more. Our friends at Pure Nootropics have been bringing you great products and deals since 2013, and they have another one with R-Ala. Go to shrnetwork.biz/pure and use code SHR30 for a whopping 30% off. Level up. Go Pure. Cortisol. P3OM uses a patented natural process to upgrade a well-researched probiotic strain that doubles every 20 minutes once inside your body. The patent proves this strain is proteolytic, meaning it digests protein. It's antiviral, antiretroviral. It eliminates pathogens and waste and is maintainable in the human digestive system. What it does better than any other strain is fight the bad guys, bugs like parasites, viruses, and other pathogens in your gut, and it doesn't require refrigeration. If you suffer from bloating, gas, indigestion, or you just need extra protection from viruses, aka bad bacteria, then I'd suggest trying this super single strain probiotic proven to wipe out bad bacteria. Go to bioptimizers.com/SHR to get a 10% discount coupon with code SHR10 and free shipping on all products. Or save even bigger by signing up to one of the plans to get as much as 38% off. That's bioptimizers.com/SHR.
This is the Superhuman Channel, doing reps with the weight of the world.
Welcome back to Superhuman Radio. I gotta plug something real quick, Joel. There's a lot of products that I use to help me overcome some of the challenges that I live with on a regular basis. And one of them is a product called Nucalm, Nucalm. A lot of people complain that they have a hard time falling asleep at night, that their mind is racing, they just can't get relaxed. Newcom is an amazing product. They use 3 different technologies. They use these little stickers that gather energy that you put right at a point on your wrist that's been shown to reduce some of the nervous system impulses that keep you wired up. Then you cover your eyes with their beautiful eye covers, and then they have an app. So they even use binaural beats technology. And within seconds of using this product, you feel your body become more and more relaxed. So I use it at 2 different times of the day. I use it, first of all, when I am going to sleep at night, prepare myself for sleep. But the other thing I do is I use it post-workout, because we all know that. Did you switch microphones, Joe?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's just making a clicking noise, but it's okay. The other time I use it is post-workout. The reason I use it post-workout is because getting cortisol to drop and getting into that relaxed mode before you have your post-workout meal is critical. That's why the terminology is rest and digest. And a lot of people are so wired up, especially if you train in the evening like I'm doing right now. I need to come down after that workout. Newcom is amazing. Nucalm is how you spell the product. You can make 2021 year to achieve a lot of the goals that have been elusive to you. We have a special link set up for our listeners. If you go to shrnucalm.com, that's shrnucalm.com, you'll get 50% off your first 30-day subscription so you can try it. And they even offer you a money-back guarantee. So what do you got to lose? Try it. It's an amazing product. It'll help you get to sleep faster. It'll help you come down and shut that cortisol down post-workout and be in that rest and digest mode, which is going to help you recover faster and build more muscle faster. Again, go to shrnucalm.com and try it today. There you go. Back to the discussion at hand about dairy.
My headphones powered down. I'm gonna improvise a little bit here. So I'm gonna plug this in so you can hear me. I'll have to unplug it to hear you, but it'll clean up the sound. So
okay. I mean, it's bad. The sound isn't bad right now. There's just a little clicking once in a while. I think it's from that microphone that you had on earlier, the one you're wearing.
Yeah, I can hear the clicking too. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's much better. That's much better. That's better. Can you hear me okay?
I have to kind of mess with it a little bit, but that's okay.
Well, I want to put an image up anyway, real quick, because I want to talk about something. So this is an infographic of what Americans eat on a year in, year out basis. Dairy by far is the single largest category. Americans eat close to 800 pounds of dairy. That's combined milk as a beverage, as well as cheese and yogurt and other things. The question I have for you, Joel, is the reason dairy gets a bad rap because of the amount that people consume here in the United States, you think?
That graphic blew my mind when you showed it to me pre-show, and very surprising. So yes, I think that could absolutely play a part if that's correct. If the average person is eating lots of, let's just say, lower grade dairy products and their gut biome is not tuned to handle dairy, then yeah, you're going to have all kinds of issues with dairy. Just coming back to the idea that the digestive horsepower that you need in order to handle dairy is really not so much in your own genome, it's in the bacterial genome. So you have to first acquire the bacterial genome that you originally had when you first started handling dairy, and then that got wiped out in order to do it. And then if you're taking in tons and tons and tons of lower grade dairy, yeah, you're going to have all kinds of issues. That would make a lot of sense.
So another question I have for you is, what role did the movement to use baby formula contribute to what we're seeing today with people not having the biome capacity to digest dairy? I mean, they didn't get any of those early microbes from the mother. not only from her milk, but from the areola. We know that the skin on the mother's nipple also contributes a large amount of that. You think that part of the problem we're having today is because people were formula fed and still are today?
Well, two answers to that question. One would be, empirically speaking, absolutely. The evidence clearly shows that there are measurable differences between formula-fed infants or formula-fed children and breastfed, naturally fed children. So yeah, there's some very clear differences and propensity and tendency. That's very much the case. And I think just anecdotally speaking too, that also is something that most people could probably verify for themselves. The other thing gets to, like, when you look at the formula industry, something I mentioned in my book quite a bit is the oligosaccharide, human milk oligosaccharides, which are these very long-chain milk oligosaccharides. The better formulas now are putting those back in to the formula because they understand that what those oligosaccharides do is they potentiate the bifidobacteria that you need as an infant in order to handle dairy and handle other things. So you're seeing a shift in the industry where they're getting a little bit smarter nutritionally and moving to make formula look more like breast milk, because it doesn't if you don't add those things back in.
What about what's the role of homogenization? The fat membrane has been shown to be a very powerful lipolytic. There's benefits to the fat membrane, but rupturing the fat membrane is the process of homogenization. Is that playing a role in people's difficulty with milk today, you think?
Yeah, lipids in milk absolutely can. There's some research I've read about the processing of lipid membranes in milk and how that definitely affects the quality and texture in milk, and affects things like the utilization of milk in the gut. So yeah, I think that absolutely plays a pretty big role in things. Yeah.
What about people with specific disorders? They kind of end up being the outliers. So we're talking about milk, and we're juxtaposing that against a fairly healthy population. There is some evidence that people with multiple sclerosis, for instance, may not do well with milk because certain glycoproteins in milk look like the target tissue on nerves that triggers the demyelination. And so they tend not to do as well with milk, or at least they're being told that they shouldn't consume milk. Do you think that there are certain people out there that milk may not work for them because of an autoimmunity or something like that, where the immune system is overreacting to certain things in the milk, like tissue in the body?
It's a tricky question. When you look at something like MS, for example, what you'll see is that there are species of bacteria that normally are extremely health promoting. And what you see are imbalances of these, like Akkermansia, for example. You see imbalances of these health promoting bacteria. And what's causing the imbalance? Well, it looks like actually, when you look in the case of MS, you get an overexpression of interferon gamma. And then the excess of interferon gamma influences populations of key bacteria like Akkermansia. And so you get these sort of imbalanced skews that can drive health negative effects. And so normally factions in milk that are health promoting, when you have an autoimmune disease, and you've got too much of a good thing already going in certain species, can actually tip the balance the other direction. And so, yeah, that can play an issue. I mean, there's never a total black and white with any food.
Right.
There's always going to be foods. There's always going to be people that have. I use the example of a casomorphin allergy. You can have a very specific type of casomorphin allergy, and milk is probably not right for you. But then when you look into the A1, A2 discussion with milk, and you look at like, well, A2 milk's good, A1's bad. No, it doesn't really hold up like that, because what you see is that again. Populations of bacteria with A1 milk are different, and you have different populations of bacteria. And then when you shift the populations of bacteria, there seems to be some suggestion that you're not having the same issues with A1 milk. So it's not as simple as the milk is good or the milk is bad. We always have to take into account the populations that we have in the gut as well. It's a little more nuanced.
I want to get this question in before we take a break. And when we take a break, can you go back to whatever you were using before as far as the headphones go? Because this microphone right now setup is causing a lot of noise. Okay, so let's just answer. Patricia Graham Anderson says, if no milk form, including non-dairy, is really healthy, then what's next? We're not saying that milk is unhealthy. We're saying that milk is actually healthy, but you have to take it in the context. And I think I could summarize by saying that raw and pasteurized milk, while people are afraid to say, go find some, because if you do get sick on it, then you want to blame everybody who told you. I've consumed raw and pasteurized milk for the better part of 20 years. My children consumed it when they were young and in school. I don't know if they seek it out today. No one's ever gotten sick in my household, but then somebody drinks it and they happen to get sick and they blame it on the milk when it may not have been the milk. That's actually been shown in several research studies. But I think that it's safe to say that raw and pasteurized milk is probably a superfood. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, let me, talking about mechanisms of dairy, let me give one that probably will blow your mind if you're listening to this. Okay. So one of the aspects of like looking at the body in terms of if we take an immune centric approach to the body, one of the interesting aspects about obesity and adipose mass is that it's basically called mitochondria immunotransfer. Okay, and so it's a process where, normally speaking, mitochondria are transferred from macrophages, from immune cells, into adipocytes as kind of a way of maintaining energy balance, and that's how energy output within adipose or within fat cells is sort of maintained in normal weight humans. But what happens with obese humans is that mitochondrial or macrophage mitochondria mediated transfer into adipocytes gets impaired. Okay, and one of the ways that you can ameliorate that is through dairy. Specifically, dairy modulates expression of the sirtuin-1 gene, sirtuin-1 protein, which is the longevity, the anti-aging gene. And by modulating the SIRT1 gene, dairy can trigger mitochondrial biogenesis and mitochondrial transfer from immune cells to fat cells. Now, you can create irreversible mitochondrial damage in obesity. So even if you think you've solved the problem, your fat mass is never the same again. One of the ways you can prevent that is with dairy. So this takes us into, like, again, very specific mechanisms mediated by immune cells where they transfer mitochondria to maintain energy balance in fat cells. And very much like angiotensin converting enzyme, there are properties unique to dairy that mediate that process and can restore normalcy. So it really takes us down this road of thinking functionally about dairy, that there are a lot of functional aspects that make dairy a super food, like in a lot of respects.
I'm sorry, I'm coughing. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We have more questions and more comments. I want to talk more about colostrum. You're watching and listening to Superhuman Radio. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? You know, the rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor, strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon. Cortisol. Getting a massage post-workout is a proven strategy to facilitate better recovery. Getting to massage therapists can be difficult and expensive, especially in these times. The solution is the Meteor, a heated massage ball from Milestorm. Reduce pain and soreness and expedite recovery with the Meteor's research-backed vibration settings and therapeutic heat. It's convenient for travel and works on any body part. Go to shrnetwork.biz/meteor and use code SHR15 for 15% off and free shipping if you buy 2 or more. Start recovering better today.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High-quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose-to-tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/whiteoak and use code SHR20 to save 20% off your entire first order.
This is the Superhuman Channel, where we use oxygen for the power of good.
I think Joel is working on his connectivity here. Welcome back to Superhuman Radio. So we have some comments, and I want to talk about this. So Bear said that Percoba no longer sells 5-kilo bags. I got them to do that for my audience, but they aren't really catering to humans anymore because their big business is catering to people who raise cattle because they add this to the calves' food to help the calves grow faster and be stronger. And of course, Robert Thompson told me about Tractor Supply, and I'm going to go to my Tractor Supply. They sell colostrum fairly inexpensive because it's designed for cows. Which brings me to this question here. Oh, let's see what that question is. Here we go. Oh, maybe not. So let's talk about colostrum for a second.
Sure.
What do you think the real magic in colostrum is? Is it the immunoglobulins and how it modulates the immune system? Is it the fat? Because it's almost 50% fat, contrary to most dairy stuff. What do you think about it?
Well, colostrum has a lot of stuff in it. It's got human milk oligosaccharides in it. So there's a very strong immunomodulatory aspect to those. And then, yeah, I think the fat in colostrum is highly anabolic. I mean, if you look at it, like, high fat feeding is extremely anabolic. But it's also got a lot of other compounds in it that are very pro muscle. Very, like, one thing when you look at real milk, like unpasteurized milk, it is extremely anabolic on all the body's growth signaling pathways. So you get strong activation of MAPK and you get strong activation of mTOR. And it's just by its very nature, the protein profile in it, the amino profile, it's super rich in leucine. And then you have a combination of dairy calcium and leucine together. So dairy calcium, there's a myth out there that dairy calcium is not absorbable. I've seen guys who consider themselves experts to say this, and it's totally wrong. Totally wrong. Dairy is by far the most absorbable form of calcium. Now here's the trick. You need insulin to grow. You need insulin function to grow. And in order for insulin to fire properly, you need mobilization of intracellular calcium. Mm-hmm. So the way that insulin actually works is when the insulin receptor fires, you get the NAADP cascade, nicotine adenine dinucleophosphate fires, and then that mobilizes intracellular calcium. So you have to have intracellular calcium pools. Well, what you find is when you look at the way that calcium in dairy, calcium in colostrum works once it gets in the gut, the presence of these glycomacropeptides and the presence of bioactive peptides in dairy works synergistically with calcium. So when I say bioactive peptide, the way to think of it is it's an encrypted code, and digestion unencrypts the code. So you have these very special proteins that turn on as soon as they get into the gut that are present in colostrum, present in dairy, and they work synergistically with calcium. and they work in a way that you can't get with calcium supplements. They work in a way that no other food seems to match, and it's because the presence of these long chain oligosaccharides in milk and bioactive peptides facilitates the absorption of calcium in the gut. So you get this massive inflection of utilizable calcium, and at the same time, you're getting these highly anabolic peptides that are present in dairy that get unencrypted. And so it's very, very functional. And again, not all, but I mean, I would say that I have personally spoken to guys like Yemeni that like firsthand probably know better than anybody else, because they've been able to take the real stuff, the real colostrum, and put muscle on.
So one of the things that I learned from Ron Schmidt when he was on the show in 2006 about his book, The Untold Story of Milk, is that before milk was pasteurized, milk was given to type 1 diabetics because it contained active insulin. You have to remember, the baby, whether it's human or a calf, doesn't have all the equipment to even digest and metabolize. So the milk must carry not only the things that are nutritious, but the things that allow that to be absorbed and utilized by the calf, because their system is naive to this stuff. Back in the day, before pasteurization, type 1 diabetics drank a glass of milk with every meal because of the insulin that was active in milk. And so, you know, when we talk about milk being a superfood, there is nothing in the world that has not only the nutritional factors, but the transporter enzymes and insulin and all the stuff you need to actually utilize that nutrition other than milk. So this idea that, and again, we can't talk about milk without recognizing that at the turn of the century, it was transformed by commercial dairy production. It was changed radically. It was changed forever. From the biblical times that said milk and honey equaled life and health to today where, milk is causing all these problems. And keep in mind, the people that are keeping you from getting raw unpasteurized dairy is the milk industry, because they don't want you to know that raw unpasteurized dairy is so healthy, so wonderful, that people literally buy cows to have access to their own milk. So there you go.
Yeah. Yep.
Did I lose you? I can hear you. I can hear you. Can you hear me? Joel?
Hey, Carl, 1 second.
Okay. He'll be right back. You know what? This is a good time to take a break. Sit tight. We'll be right back. Instead of having dead air and just having to look at my mug. Sit tight, Joel. We'll be right back. I'm going to take a quick commercial break. Sit tight. TaylorMade Health is focused on making sure you're able to perform and look your best. They are a leader in game-changing supplements and cosmetic products. Whether you want to increase strength, expedite recovery, facilitate soft tissue repair, or reduce deep wrinkles, TaylorMade Health has you covered. TaylorMade Health is also the home to Dr. Seed's products such as BPC, BPC Plus, and the Chill Pill. All of my listeners can now get 20% off their first order with code TRY20. That's TRY20. This code can even be used on subscription orders. Visit shrnetwork.biz/try20 today and use code TRY20 for 20% off your first order. Folks, I'm pleased to announce that Pure Nootropics is now carrying the antioxidant alpha-lipoic acid in its bioidentical natural form as R-Alla. R-Alla provides protection in many areas and has even been shown to promote weight loss. Check out the interview I did on episode 2608 back in October to learn more. Our friends at Pure Nootropics have been bringing you great products and deals since 2013, and they have another one with R-Alla. Go to shrnetwork.biz/pure and use code SHR30 for a whopping 30% off. Level up. Go Pure. The power of light can be truly life-changing and an important element for every superhuman. Because of this, I want you to experience the power of award-winning Saluma light therapy. Saluma utilizes NASA research technology to improve health at the cellular level and is cleared by the FDA to effectively treat a variety of pain, muscle, and joint conditions, as well as facial wrinkles and acne. Our entire team here at Superhuman Radio uses it. Its innovative shape-taking design allows for easy placement anywhere on the body. Choose from 30 13 different models. For an exclusive listener discount, go to shrnetwork.biz/Celuma. That's CELLUMA. And use code SHR10 to save 10% off of one of these award-winning devices.
This is the Superhuman Channel, where brawn and brains finally meet.
How about now? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I had to run another break anyway, so it worked out perfect.
Okay, so sorry.
We're talking about colostrum. There's another interesting thing I want to throw at you. So iron overload is a real thing today.
Yep.
You guess what helps you rid iron from your body? Lactoferrin. And there's lots of it in colostrum.
Yep. Yeah, it's another aspect. Again, on the video I recently did for Unconfused, there was a section where I went into like some of the functional aspects or functional properties of dairy, and at the top of the list is lactoferrin. So, lactoferrin is an iron-binding protein that's present in milk, and finding ways to eliminate iron, excess iron, as we get older is a big deal. So when you take the fact that lactoferrin does two really important things. Number one, it binds iron, but it also binds lipopolysaccharide, which is not generally well known. Age-related inflammation or explosion of the inflammasome, inflammaging, begins in adipose mass as we age, and adipose mass acts like a megaphone. So what happens is, as adipose mass becomes inflamed, it magnifies inflammation across the whole body. And so then you're looking at this acceleration of cellular senescence. So when you look at what lactoferrin does, not only does it bind iron, but at the same time, it also binds lipopolysaccharide and helps prevent lipopolysaccharide from penetrating into adipose mass where it inflames the whole body. That's a big deal. And when you combine that with other properties that are present in dairy, for example, there are O-linked glycans in dairy, which are glycomacropeptides. These are very specific long chain sugar proteins that do a number of really interesting things. At the center of them is a galactosamine sugar that feeds Akkermansia, feeds bifidobacteria, feeds some of the healthiest bacteria that you'd want in the body. You get not just one, but like over a dozen mechanistic angles where dairy is beneficial for longevity, it's beneficial for body composition, it's beneficial for inflammation, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, blood pressure, like on and on and on. So it's extremely functional food. And going back to your point of when we see what's happened to the quality of our dairy over the last 50 years, you get a little bit better picture that you have a really functional food that has been sort of neutered through a lot of very poor grades that are consumed in mass. But if we come back to what it's originally meant to do, you find exactly what you're talking about. Some of the leanest, healthiest, longest lived humans consume dairy.
And if you want to try real dairy, real milk, you can go to the website realmilk.com. I have no vested interest in promoting this other than to help people find real milk in their area. This website is maintained by the Weston A. Price Foundation. You'll find a farmer within driving distance of your home that will let you become part of a cow share program. So you pay maybe $59 for a share of a cow, and you can get 1 to 2 gallons of milk a week. You can buy legally. It's a game changer. Everybody who tries real milk says, well, the kids all say they think it's a milkshake because it tastes so delicious.
Right.
But
yeah.
People talk about acne going away. People talk about sleep disturbances being removed. There's so many benefits, and people always talk about, wow, my kids didn't get sick this year at school. Everybody else got sick, but my kids didn't. You got to remember something. Real milk is a living thing. Pasteurization kills it. You're basically eating liquid roadkill when you're drinking commercial milk that you buy at your grocery store. God's honest truth. It really is. I know that sounds like an absurd thing to say, but that's really the truth. So check out realmilk.com and see if you can find real milk in your area.
You know, one of, or probably the, just oddly, I'm not trying to blow sunshine up your ass, but the most anabolic protein supplement I've ever had was yours. And I remember asking you about it, like, hey, what do you got in there? Like, I'm getting like pumped on this stuff, like, and I don't normally get that with protein powders. And it was due to all of the lactoglobulins and, you know, all of the milk protein derivatives that you had in there.
I designed that protein powder around research about what's in human breast milk. I can't take credit for that product. Mother Nature dictated what I needed to put into that product to get the benefits of protein, dairy protein, out of that product, because that's what's found in human breast milk.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. It was like, again, like a personal proof. Using that, like I'm big on personal proofs. Like if I can take something and it works for me, I don't care what the research says. I don't care what anything else says. It works personally, and that's more powerful than anything. And that was a personal proof. Like taking that stuff, like it was like, wow, okay.
Yeah. And I think there's like maybe a couple hundred jugs left, and then we're done with it. It was too expensive to have an impact. You know, people looked at that and they thought, why would I pay $60 for a 3-pound jug of this when $60 will buy me, 5 to 7, maybe more than that from, some other company's whey protein. And of course, this wasn't whey protein. This was actually designed to mimic human breast milk. I mean, we had the enzymes in it. We had the bifidobacteria in it. We had added amino acids, because people don't realize, when a mother nurses a baby, there's not just casein and whey in there, but there's actually free-form amino acids that go right through the gut and into the bloodstream. So the baby gets nutrition immediately upon it hitting the stomach. And then you continue to get proteins for hours after that, because it's a slow and fast protein combination. So I did everything that I thought was important that was found in human breast milk. That
would be a really separate topic. That would be a really good show to do, like, because in the supplement industry, that's kind of the history of really outstanding products, like products that actually really do work. You find that story where the cost to bring them to market to make a real product is so expensive that they're not viable. They work, but you pass a certain price point where it's hard to get people to pay for it.
Yeah, because protein powders are commodity items today. They're commodity items. People they look at what's the lowest price I can pay for a pound of this. They don't care if one is better than the other.
Yep.
I mean, let's be honest. If people cared what protein was better than the other, then vegan proteins wouldn't be very popular, because they're the least bioavailable and digestible of all the proteins. People buy up vegan protein all day long.
I made a mitochondrial energy product back in 2007, 2008, and it had no stims, and it really worked. Meaning, like, when you took it, you felt like you were on caffeine. Like, it actually really worked. It felt like you were jacked on caffeine, but there were no stims whatsoever. It was all pure cellular energy. And my cost to make that thing was about $35 a can, which means, like, your best case scenario, just selling it direct, it's going to be $70 a can. But to even think about getting it into retail, it's like $210.
Didn't you give that to me when we were at one of the Quest meetings, and I told you I felt like somebody turned the lights on, like brighter in the room?
Yeah, that was based on it. That was a derivative of it. Yeah, it was meant to be more of a watered down version of it. But right. Like without any stims to get it where like it really worked. But again, the history of products that really work, getting it out there at a price people will pay for, very, very tough.
It's because most supplement companies cater to people who want things delivered in baby talk. Yep. That's the God's honest truth. People don't want, you know what? The complexity of the human body is so amazing that to think that this is good and this is bad is just, it's an insult to the intelligence of people who pay attention to the complexity of the human body. So,
yeah, totally. Yeah.
Again, the website is Veep Nutrition, VEEP Nutrition.com. Check it out. Everything that Joel does is legit. Show him some love. Hey, thanks for being on the show today, brother.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
And please share this show to help other people become unconfused about dairy. We'll see everybody Monday with more Superhuman Radio. Take care.
Take care.